Hey, it's James from Marketing for Restaurants here, and welcome to episode 133 of Secret Sauce, the restaurant marketing podcast, the coronavirus survival plan for your restaurant.
Some restaurants are quiet, lose money, and the owner works 70 hours a week. Other restaurants are busy, profitable, and the owners work a few hours a day. What's the difference? They have a secret sauce. Join James from Marketing for Restaurants as he helps you come up with your recipe for restaurant success, your secret sauce.
Hey team, welcome back to the podcast. I hope you got a couple of ideas out of our Easter special where we went through some of the planning processes that we use to come up with ideas for an event. In this case, we were talking about Easter. Now, fun fact, I've been doing a little bit of research, and in the United States, there's a drink called an Irish car bomb. Now, we've got St. Patrick's Day coming up. I'm going to go and create a video of the Irish car bomb, literally because it gives me an excuse to go out and buy some Jameson and a Guinness. So that's what I'll be drinking tonight. One of those things, so we've got St. Paddy's Days coming up, and that's another thing that, we're working through with our customers to be thinking about: a little bit of green, a little bit of Guinness, a little bit of Irish fun to enable you to get some more customers in and turn them into repeat customers. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of today's podcast, just a little bit of a shout out. So thank you for everyone who supported the podcast, either by sharing, tagging a mate in, letting other restaurant owners know about it. I actually produce 4 different podcasts. That's why I work at pretty much every Saturday that I've got free in producing podcasts, because I'm such a big believer in it. We've picked up customers all around the world from listening to the Secret Sauce podcast. I do one on military history. I do one on general business, and also do one on 4-wheel driving. I've got a BT50, which I like getting a little bit of mud on every now and then. And across those 4 podcasts, we hit 1 million downloads, which, I think is, I'm pretty proud of that. That's a pretty cool milestone to hit. So for everyone, for all of our Secret Sauce listeners, all of our restaurant owners and chefos out there who have helped and supported the podcast in some way, a really big thank you. Couldn't do it without your support. I was just having a look at one of the Facebook posts that we've got for a previous episode. There was like 30 shares on it and about 200 likes and a few comments in there as well. It's really important to help us spread the word. We do it for a little bit of lead gen, hope that, to demonstrate to people that we actually do know something about restaurant marketing. But it really does help when people share that podcast or tag a mate in, particularly if they're in need of a little bit of restaurant marketing help. So yes, now let's get into the horror that is the coronavirus. Now today we are doing a survival plan for your restaurant based on the coronavirus. And this is actually a request that came through from LinkedIn. And I tried to find the message, I couldn't find it, so I apologize about that. But whoever it was, they were in the United States and obviously starting to worry about coronavirus. Now, so it is Friday the 6th of March. And you know what? I'm saying that normally I don't date my podcasts, but I think it's important with this one because it's moving really quite quickly. The first bit of advice that I've been giving to restaurants is to keep an eye on what is happening. And the thing that I've been doing to do that is I've been going to the WHO, the World Health Organization, and on their front page, they've got a link to a page that's got a series of sit reps. So every day they're creating a new sit rep about what's happening, and it's got a pretty little map that tells you where all of the infections are. Obviously, then it goes down and it's got this table, gives you a bit of a preamble about what's been happening and what the WHO's doing. I'm not overly interested in that. What I have been looking at though is the number of infections. So you can see, and the big interest was in what was happening in China. That is really, really settling down now. So on the front page, it tells you how many globally. And yesterday there were 2,241 new cases, only 143 new ones in China. Having said that, 31 new deaths in China, which is a bit untidy. Outside of China, 53 new deaths. So the balance of the infections has swung a lot more to countries outside of China. And just having a quick look at external to that, South Korea, a huge number of infections there. Italy as well, and Iran. They're the three big troubled ones. In Australia, in little old Australia, you have only got, let me have a look, 66. We've got 23 new cases. We've had 3 deaths. 2 of them were new. Now, one of those was someone who was 95 years old or 92 years old. Quite the tragedy. However, they were 92 years old. And one of the things that I've been using in our risk assessments is I've tried to find as much information about the mortality rates. Interestingly enough, if you're less than 50 years old, then your chances of dying from coronavirus are less than, I think it's 0.5%. Most of those people have got comorbidities. Most of those people have got something else wrong with them, whether it's diabetes or some sort of lung complaint, any of those sort of immune suppressing type things. They're the things that are making those people much more likely to be severely impacted or even killed by the coronavirus. For everyone else, not really that much of an infection. And to put it in perspective, the thing that I think is really interesting, in Australia, there are only 66 cases so far. In the United States, there can be as many as 640,000 cases of influenza. That was one stat that I got when I was doing a little bit of research. In Australia, there's Australian Bureau of Statistics information. 2017, which was quite a bad year for the flu in Australia, there was 250,000 people with influenza notifications that had been confirmed in a laboratory. So 250,000 people, and we're comparing that with the 60 people that we've got from coronavirus. Now, we're going to be talking about the actual coronavirus and some of the things that you can do there. We're also going to be talking about the reaction of people, because this is the thing that is really important, and this is the thing that is impacting people in their restaurants now. And I suspect this is why someone's reached out to me and said, can we have a coronavirus plan or podcast to come up with some ideas? So in Australia, I'm not sure if you're listening in Australia, then you'll obviously know that the biggest concern that everyone has about coronavirus is toilet paper. I'm not sure why, but you can't buy a roll of toilet paper for love nor money in Australia right now. It's become a highly precious commodity. The people are scalping it. I'm not really sure why. It's one of the things that we actually manufacture in Australia, and we actually have the capability to produce more than we need in Australia. So it's a little bit bizarre as to why there would be a massive run on toilet paper, no pun intended. But this comes to the fundamental issue that we are all having, and that is the perception, the fear that people are having. Coronavirus in Australia has killed 3 people as of now. I tell you, right now, straight up, it's killed a lot more Chinese restaurants than that. And this is the real tragedy of it, is that because of the fact that it started in China, because of the fact that there was a huge number of people in China who were infected with it, we have seen a huge reaction to people going to Chinese restaurants. And that is spreading out now to all different kinds of restaurants. I was in a fine dining restaurant 2 nights ago. I had an amazing meal. It was really epic. We'll probably talk about that at some stage. But the restaurant was probably about 2/3 full, and weekly takings are down 20%. Almost entirely because of coronavirus. This is completely amazing, the way that people are overreacting to the dangers of getting the coronavirus. Probably about 3 weeks ago, when coronavirus was a thing that people were talking about, obviously we had toilet paper supplies back then, so we were before the real crisis as it's developed so far had developed. But I went to Din Tai Fung in Melbourne for some dumplings with my good friend Max, one of my LinkedIn connections. We wanted to talk about LinkedIn and online marketing and have a good time. Din Tai Fung, very, very successful dumpling restaurant in lots of Asian countries. The place was probably about 1/4 full. All of the staff were wearing masks. And it was at that point that I thought, wow, you know what? I just hadn't thought about it. We were just going out, and I didn't realize until we got there, saw everyone in masks, and saw just how empty the place was. It was, this is actually a big deal in Chinese restaurants. That is now spreading out. So, what do we want to do? How are we going to handle this? And in general, the advice, so my wife runs an IT company and they've been doing quite a bit of consulting to a wide range of businesses, talking about supply chain issues that they've got, talking about the ways that they can manage it. One of those things is, now's the time you sort of dig into your cash reserves. What restaurant has cash reserves? I mean, realistically, most people, very tight margins. It's going to be difficult for many restaurants to be able to survive this, I think, just because of the fact that there aren't those cash reserves around to enable you to survive lean or very lean times before people go out and start dining again. So we've had a bit of a think. We've gone through some of our processes. We've talked to a few restaurant owners and we've come up with a few things that you can do. And we've broken it up into the staff, the business, and customers. And then we're going to talk about online ordering. Many people are looking at online ordering to be the savior of their business in these dark times. I don't think that's going to work out too well, and we're going to go through the reasons why I think that. So first off, with your staff, you need to protect your staff. So hand sanitizers, maybe you should be thinking about masks. It is a place where people are going to gather, and you are going to be having people coming in who you don't know if they've got the virus. Now, in Melbourne, very few people with coronavirus. So probably at this point, I wouldn't be worried too much about it. Sydney is becoming a little bit more of a hotspot, so we need to be thinking about Sydney a little bit more. But I don't think that still, when you look at the raw numbers, how many people live in Sydney? How many people have got the coronavirus? How many people are much more likely to have the flu? And we never did anything around the flu. So keeping it in perspective is one of those things. I know in Starbucks, to protect the Starbucks in China, you couldn't go in and get a coffee without having your temperature taken. So there was a lot of businesses that had bought these thermometers. You just point them at your forehead and it would give you a reading. That was the way of identifying whether you had a fever or not. Obviously, we know now that that's probably too late. There's people who are asymptomatic who have the disease. There are people who haven't developed a fever who are infected. So it's very hard to tell those who are infected from those who aren't. So really, you're going to fall back to things like hand sanitizers, possibly masks. Definitely you want to up the cleaning. We don't know how long the virus can stay viable outside of the body, but I've seen suggestions that it might be 7 days. So keeping the place clean is really important. And I think not only do you need to keep the place clean, and let's face it, that's nothing new in a restaurant. They should be the cleanest places that most people will go in their entire day, cleaner than their own house. So the kitchen and the public areas of a restaurant, usually very clean. I think not only do you want to keep it clean, you want to be seen to be keeping it clean as well, because that leads on to the next thing that we want to talk about, and that is the customers. When it comes to the customers, once again, we want to keep things in perspective. In many of the places that we have listeners, now, as it is now, there are very few limitations. So in Australia last week, our Prime Minister said you can still go out in groups, you can still go to the football, you can still go to a Chinese restaurant. The trick is getting the people to actually come to your Chinese restaurant or to any restaurant for that matter. And that's why we talk about the cleaning. You want them to have that confidence that the place is spick and span and that there's no risk to them. The next thing that you're going to have to do is, realistically, marketing. We are all going to have to give our customers a reason to overcome their fear of, which is realistically quite irrational, given the fact that they're much more likely to get the flu and they're much more likely to die from the flu. All of these things mean that as it is now it could get a lot worse. It probably will get worse. I don't know if it's going to get really bad. But we need to be giving our customers a little bit of reassurance and giving them a reason to come out. Now, whether that is event marketing, whether that is marketing around your current dishes, are you doing any new dishes? All of those things. If you're short of ideas, probably go back and listen to the last 132 episodes that we've done, because we've covered some fairly amazing ground. I think there's plenty of ideas out there. But I think now more than ever is the time that you need to be doing some marketing. What we are finding with coronavirus is that it really is a fast-moving feast. People's feelings are changing almost on a day-to-day basis. You can see that reflected in the stock market. You can also see it in the levels of toilet paper that are available in Australian supermarkets. Hopefully, we will start to see the supply of toilet paper improve. What I think is going to happen is we will get a little bit sick and tired of it. The media is definitely beating this up. They're creating all sorts of stories about how severe it is. And it's interesting because when you actually delve into the numbers, and that's why I've been trying to get my information from factual sites like the World Health Organization. That's helping me to keep it in perspective. And also, I'm trying to do my own research. And I think that's really important because many of the news sites have blown this entirely out of all proportion. Now, probably going to get worse before it gets better. How worse is it going to be? I saw on the news this morning someone talking about millions of deaths from this. Yes, and certainly we can go back to Spanish flu. Yes, there were 25 million or around 25 million. It was so bad that we don't really know how many people died, but it was around within the ballpark of 25 million people. But things are fundamentally different from when the Spanish flu was around to today. Many people's immune systems were fundamentally weakened by going without decent food for 4 years, because they were the 4 years of the Great War. And this is why testing, adjusting with your marketing campaigns almost on a weekly basis to see what works and what doesn't work. Because I think people will get sick and tired of being fearful, and it's just going to become the new norm, and then people are going to start going back out again. I think we're less likely to see people hunkered down for 2 or 3 months. I certainly hope that is not the case, because I know that many restaurants don't have another 2 or 3 months in them to be able to survive, and that's the really scary thought. So do some marketing. We've had a spike of interest in people looking for help with their marketing. In fact, we were out seeing a customer. One marketing company is closing down because they've struggled to get customers. That's a good win for us. I think it's going to be a good win for their restaurant customers, because we're going to be introducing some new innovative marketing strategies that their existing marketing company didn't do. So if you are having some problems, then definitely reach out to us on the website, marketingforrestaurants.com. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm super keen. I realise that this is, for many restaurants, a critical time. In Sydney, where I think it's probably ground zero in Australia, we're starting to see this in the United States in certain pockets as well. Many, particularly Chinese restaurants have closed. What we need to do is we need to convince people to start going back out. We need to give them something innovative that's going to help them with that. So look at who your regular customers are, give them a reason to come back, reassure them, and you know what? Thank them for showing a little bit of courage and coming out in what the media is really trying to make out to be quite a scary time. I don't think it's that scary. Now, from a business point of view, now's the time that you delve into your cash reserves. Well, we've already covered that. You probably don't have cash reserves. So a couple of things that you can do. One, if you're not getting that many people in, really look at your inventory levels. Pair that back to the bare minimum that you need to be able to keep things ticking over. You won't need the kind of inventory that you had, and there's probably a little bit of cash flow that you can eke out of that just by decreasing your inventory. Second thing, staff costs. You want to keep your great staff around. You want to give them the hours. You want to give them, because we know it's going to be tough for them as well, but you're going to have to really strike a balance, I think, between the amount of staff that you have in and the wages that you've got going out versus the money that you've got coming in from your customers. Ideally, do some awesome marketing and keep the place full. That's probably not going to happen. That's the best case scenario. So you need to be thinking about how many people you've got on for each shift. Do you start closing down some nights? What is it that you can do so that you can lose the smallest amount of money on a daily basis, or have, decreased revenue, decreased profitability? I think, and from some of the restaurants that I've been talking to, it's definitely trying to minimize the amount of money that you're losing. Now, this is probably my number one tip. My number one tip for the coronavirus playbook: hit your landlord up for a review. With the restaurants that are closing, straight up, no one is jumping in really and saying, this is a huge opportunity, let me lease 5 new restaurant places because that's going to be amazing. No one is saying that. So landlords know that if you close down, it might be 6 months, it might be 12 months. We do not know how long that this is going to go for. They do not want a place that they can't lease out for 12 or 18 months? How long is it going to take for everyone to get back on their feet? So now, I don't think it's going to be that long. I'm certainly hoping that it's not. I'm planning on it not being that long. In their mind, they might be a little bit more hesitant. So if they've got a mortgage, if they're making interest payments to the bank, they're definitely going to be looking for the money to be coming in. Maybe not all of the money, because some of the money coming in is a lot better than none of the money coming in. So hit your landlord up for a rent review. Tell them, if you've been smashed revenue-wise, open your books, show them and say, this is what is happening to me. If not, hit them up anyway. I think now's the big opportunity to stem the losses, or to be a little bit more profitable. But definitely talk to your landlord, explain to them the situation with coronavirus, people not going out anymore, and see what you can do. I talk to restaurant owners a lot, and when we do our marketing, it's one of the things, what's your lease? Because that really sort of sets the, what our targets need to be, particularly for a new restaurant that's opening. We do opening marketing plans, and a lot of the time, I was doing one a little while ago, and the restaurant owner wasn't sure what his revenue needed to be, and I did some quick calculations based on his lease, and he was like, wow, it'd be great to turn over that. And it's like, no, it's not great to turn over that. That's what you need to turn over. If the revenue is decreasing significantly, you really need to be thinking about trying to hit your landlord up. Some of them won't go for it. I know that. Some of them are going to be like tough, and in that case, it might be, that your restaurant can't survive, and that's a real tragedy. But I know that there are a lot of landlords out there who, just as you are scared about what's going to happen over the next week, the next month, the next 6 months, they are just as scared, and they're thinking, if this guy or gal closes their restaurant, what am I going to do? Because there might be a few places that are closed on the street, lots of competition to try and get that next restaurant owner in. And this is one of those times where not everyone is planning on opening a restaurant. I think for every restaurant that closes, there isn't going to be someone replacing them. Some of these places are going to stay closed for a very long time. Now, the last thing from a business point of view is I think that now is the time for people to show a little bit of courage, a little bit of leadership. I was meant to go to a conference next week. It was in Noumea, which was going to be pretty exciting. Flights were booked, accommodation was booked, everything was go. And this week they pulled the pin on it, and the team out of the United States, the company out of the United States, had put a ban on international travel and any sort of gatherings because of the risk. I said to the company, really, I don't think that that's a great result. In Noumea, there are 0 people infected with coronavirus that we know of. In Australia, there are 60 people now, it was probably 40 back then, who are infected with it. Compare and contrast that with the normal flu, very, very small. So I'm actually going. Now, the conference isn't on. I'm going to work away. Tina's company's been helping people, set up work from home plans. Obviously, in a restaurant, work from home doesn't work, and that's a big issue, because restaurants are one of those industries where the physical work is done in a physical place. It's not like, and from us, from a restaurant marketing point of view, all of our team could work from home without too much disruption at all. In fact, some of them do anyway. So that's quite interesting. I think the way that people are reacting to it, and this is the reason that I'm still going to Noumea, is really we need to be demonstrating that there's only 60 people who have been diagnosed with coronavirus. It's highly likely that there'll be the vast majority of those will recover, make a full recovery. So maybe, just maybe, we're blowing this thing out of all proportion. It's actually really quite safe on an aircraft for various technical reasons with the way that they filter the air. So I'm not really worried at all. In fact, I'm quite looking forward to being out of the office for a couple of days in the sun, get some vitamin D, increase my immune system, have a little bit of relax, and just have some time to be able to work on the important things I need to work on away from, the hustle and bustle of the office. I might get some good French cuisine there as well. I've never been to Noumea before, but I'm quite looking forward to it. Now, lastly, I wanted to talk about online ordering. So, opportunity/crisis. In Queensland, 2,700 people have been issued voluntary quarantine orders. So they've been asked by the state government not to go out, not to meet with any other people, to stay at home. So you would think, on the face of it, that would be a boon for takeaway. Now, You know my thoughts on that. You don't want to be signing up to Uber Eats because they're going to cost you a fortune. They're going to be doing 35%. If you are, then obviously increase your prices by 35%. But even then, I still don't think that's a great solution. I am thinking that there will be a ban on Uber Eats, Deliveroo, Menulog, Grubhub, Just Eat, all of those kind of things. And here's why I've come to that conclusion. Firstly, there's no sick leave for those guys. So if they don't turn up, then they don't get paid. That's the first thing. Secondly, there's no quality control. When they turn up, no one says, gee, you look really sick. Maybe you should go home. Thirdly, we know that there's quality control issues. So there's lots of pictures out there. There's lots of security camera footage. You see people as you're riding along and you're sitting next to the Deliveroo rider and he's having a little bit of a snack because he's a hungry student, doesn't get paid a lot of money, so just a handful of chips. No one's going to notice them. It's just a handful of chips. No one's going to notice. Well, old mate may not have washed his hands. Old may be infected with coronavirus. Old may be infecting all of the people that he's in contact with, because not only is it the food transmission that we potentially need to be worried about, but it's also the fact that the contact. So if he's got coronavirus, he's going to be out there, he's going to be meeting all of these people and potentially infecting them. Compare and contrast with your trusty delivery driver. So one, he gets sick. That's annoying. But he's probably got sick leave. If he's not a casual, he's probably got sick leave. So he might be more likely to stay at home. That's a good thing. Secondly, when he comes to your restaurant, you can say, mate, you look sick. How about you go home? I don't want you delivering to our customers today. So there's a little bit more quality control. And third, he knows as well as you do that if there's any complaints about the food being eaten, then much more likely to lose his job, so much less likely to do it. And I know that, so it's Friday, it's 7 o'clock. I'm very keen to end this podcast so I can get home, so that I can get some Indian food delivered. That will be exciting. Sometimes it's the owner of the restaurant who delivers it. I know the crew, they know us. They're much more likely to be responsible in the way that they're handling the food because, they're employees of that restaurant. So watch this space when it comes to the gig economy riders. There's been increasing talk about it this week. I've seen multiple news articles about it, but my thinking is that the government is going to be cracking down on all of these potential vectors. This is one of the things that they're going to be really interested in. So that's about it. Look after your staff, look after your customers, talk to your customers, market to your customers, give them a reason to come in. You may need to discount. That's the scary thing. Definitely hit up your real estate agent. I don't know what deals are on the offing. It may be 1 or 2 months rent free. It may be 50% off. It might be a couple of $1,000 a month. Whatever you can get, that is the opportunity to decrease the amount of money that you're going to lose over the next, it's probably going to be more than a week. It might be a month. It might be more than that. Whatever it is, hunker down, look at those costs, and try and look after everyone. We're all in this together. It is certainly interesting times. Interesting times because the media is making interesting times. And, in Australia, we've got the bog roll crisis, which is literally more worrying, I think, for most people than actual coronavirus. And, hopefully that public sentiment turns around. That's about it. I will be back next week, hopefully with something, definitely with something a little bit more upbeat, a little bit more positive to talk about, because there's plenty of exciting things that are happening in the restaurant marketing world, and not everyone is being heavily impacted by coronavirus. A lot of restaurants out there a little bit, but I think won't be too long and we're on through the other side of it. You only have to look at China. The number of their back to work is what we're hearing, and the number of cases is dwindling dramatically. And it's only really, you're probably only looking at 10 weeks for China. And they got off to a slow start. In a lot of countries, like Australia, we've ahead of the curve. So I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as bad as China. But only time will tell. Let's see how it all goes. That's about it. Have a glorious week. And I'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Want more customers for your restaurant, cafe or takeout? Every month, our marketing tools and information are used by thousands of restaurant owners just like you to help them find more customers and turn them into repeat customers. All of our tools and information is designed specifically for restaurant owners. We know you don't have a lot of time to spend marketing or learning complicated procedures, so our tools are quick and easy to use. If you're looking to increase your revenue and profits or want to work less hours, check out marketingforrestaurants.com.